Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and I make videos about books, writing and every other random things living rent-free in my neurodivergent brain. Today I'm doing the April Showers Brings Mayflowers tag. I was asked by Ellen from Ellen Made Book Club to do this tag, and this is a creation from someone who's apparently not on YouTube anymore, so I had like different attributions from the videos I've seen. So it's either from Backlist Books or Beyond the Book Reviews. Sadly, the original video is not up online anymore, so I can't really link it. Initially, this was only the April shower part of the tag, but then Katherine from Raspberry Reads also added the Mayflowers part of it. This is a fun tag for the spring season. We're already well into May, which is why the Mayflowers part has been added, as I understand. But yeah, I'm excited to give it a go and talk about some books. Let's start with the April Showers prompts. So the first one is, what is a good book recommendation for a rainy day? So for that one, I have a bit of a tangent take. I would say I would recommend Dry by Neal and Jarrod Shusterman. This is a dystopian YA novel, which is gonna make you enjoy the rain. If you're feeling a little bit resentful about the rainy days, this book is gonna make you very grateful actually for the rain and the water. This is the story of Elisa, a teen who's living in a suburban area in California where droughts have been happening consistently for several years. When we started the story, water actually ran out and there's no water coming out of the tap anymore. Obviously, in such a drastic situation, things in her neighborhood start to unravel and neighbors turn against each other trying to find water, and she needs to make life or death decisions when her parents are not returning home and she needs to take care of her little brother and find ways to survive. The beginning of this book felt very realistic and very scary and unsettling. I was a bit less convinced by the very end of the book. I was a bit disappointed by the denouement, but I think it was still a very fun, well, maybe not fun, but like still a good read. I was gripped the whole time and really wanted to know what happened. So yeah, here you go. That's what I would recommend for a rainy day. If you're a little bit unhappy with the weather, this book will definitely make you crave some rain. The second prompt is, which two characters would you spend a rainy day with? For me, that would be Ophelia from The Mirror Visitor. So this is the French edition, but it's been translated into English. And Ophelia is the main character. She works in a museum at the beginning of the story, and she has this special ability to, by touch, know the history of an object, which I find fascinating. And she also has a second talent, which is to travel through mirrors, so she's able to visit different places if the mirrors are not too far apart. I would love to spend a rainy day with her and discuss the history of maybe objects around my home or things like that. I think she would have a lot of interesting stories to share. And then for a second character, I'm gonna go pretty mainstream, I think, with Hermione from Harry Potter. As a good bookworm, I think we could spend a lovely day just cozying up and reading books together. The third prompt is about a book that has a rainy setting. I had a hard time finding a novel on my bookshelves with a rainy setting, but I settled on this little book, which is in French. It's La Bretagne Mystérieuse, which is like a collection of myth and legends from the Brittany area, which is known in France to be very rainy. But because this is in French and not necessarily accessible to a lot of people who are watching this channel, I found an alternative in English, which is Popular Legends of Brittany by Émile Souvestre, and this one is available in English thanks to A. Lady and R. Thorne. This is an option for like a rainy setting and like learning about, again, all the folklore and folk tales of that area of France where it's very rainy. You have a lot of lush greenery and forestry and things like that. The fourth prompt is for a book with water on the cover. And so for this one, I'm going with Dancing at the Pity Party by Tyler Feder. I'm not entirely sure that I'm reading the name correctly, so apologies if I'm butchering it. This is a graphic memoir about Tyler, who lost her mom, and kind of her grieving process and honoring the memory of her mother. I read that a few years back and I don't have a very strong memory of it, to be honest, but I kept it, which meant that I really enjoyed it, and I think the art style is pretty cute. And yeah, I remember it having a bit of dark humor and taking kind of at times like a light take on grief. From the title you can also say that like it has a lot of humor in it, and it's taking a light-hearted approach to grief. It's like it's not gonna be a very heavy, thoughtful book. Like obviously it's still a heavy and sad topic, but she's taking, I think, a fresh and light approach to it. Water on the cover is like raindrops, which could also be interpreted as tears. And the final prompt for the April part of this tag is a book that had a dry start but an amazing ending. And I struggled a bit with this prompt because I think if I'm really struggling with a book at the beginning, I might just DNF it and not read it to the end. So I don't really have a memory of a book that I found very dry at the beginning, but I know from my book club that some people had that feeling with Circe by Madeline Miller. Some friends and other members of the book club mentioned that like the beginning was a bit too slow for their taste, and that it only picked up for them once Circe is exiled to her island. For some people that would be a dry start, but they ended up enjoying it. So I think that would fit this prompt. That was not my experience. I liked the book from beginning to end. But yeah, that's the one I have for you today. Now onto the Mayflower parts of the tag with the first prompt, which is a book that has flowers in it. For this one, I would recommend Grounding, Finding a Home in a Garden by Lula Elander. This is a memoir about Lula's relationship to her garden. Sadly, she lost her mom, and a few weeks later she learned that the house that she was living in might not be her own for very long. She was renting at the time, so there was a discussion about selling the house, but Lula's family couldn't afford to buy it. So it was a lot of loss for her at the same time, like the loss of her mother, the potential loss of her home that she loved very deeply. And so she still decided to invest and focus her attention on her garden and still like plant flowers and vegetables and do all that work. And she decided to do that even not knowing if she would still be there when that works would come to fruition, if she would see those flowers bloom. I haven't finished it, I'm still halfway through, but I really love the writing. I think it's very soft, very poetic. It talks also about other famous gardens or gardens of famous people, like mostly writers and artists. I think it's a very cozy read, and especially if you enjoy gardening yourself, you're gonna love this. The second prompt is for a book that has a character with a botanical name. The first one that came to mind was Violet from Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. You probably already know all about this book because it's been all over. It's basically the story of Violet, who is entering a dragon rider school and all the amazing adventures that follow. It's a romantasy. It's not a masterpiece, but it's a lot of fun. So there you go. Next, a book to read on a warm spring evening. I would like to recommend The Year of Less by Kate Flanders. This is a non-fiction book, again, a memoir. Kate, who in her late 20s, I think, decided to do a no buy year. So buy nothing except like the bare minimum, like groceries and replacing like her shampoo or things like that when needed, for a whole year. In parallel to that, she also did a big declutter of all of her belongings. I really like this. It's not like a Marie Kondo guide on how to do things. It's really like her own journey and how she did things and her reflections about this and the impact it had on her life. Actually, that really moved me and touched me. I really enjoyed this. I think that would be the best kind of decluttering book I've read. I found it very motivating, and so the reason I picked this one for this prompt is that I think that would be a good cozy read for spring evening, and also kind of a good spark of motivation to start spring cleaning, which would be the season. Next, for a book with flowers on the cover, I picked Into the Forest by Jean Egland, and this is another dystopic novel, although this one would be adults, and I would suggest to check the trigger warning for sexual assault on this one. This is a story of Eva and Neal, two sisters in their late teens working in isolation in a house in the middle of the forest in a world that has gone bad. We don't really know what happened, we just know that like the situation is bad, and so they live as recluse to kind of protect themselves and keep them safe away from all the trouble. And so we follow their life and their path of survival in the forest as, again, just like two teenagers lost alone in the forest. The next prompt is for books with bees or insects in it. For this one, I would want to recommend Empire of the Ants by Bernard Werber, which is translated from French into English by Margaret Roch. I haven't read this one, but it's one of my mom's favorite books, so I'm due for a read at some point. She really adored this book. It's the story of Jonathan, whose uncle studied ants for many years and was an expert about ants. When his uncle dies, Jonathan inherits his apartment with the only rule that he should not go beyond the cellar door. So he keeps away from that, but one day the dog disappears through that door, and so he's forced to break that rule and enter the Empire of the Ants. And finally, the last prompt is about a character that you would want to stroll through a garden with. So for this, I've picked Rules for Visiting. The main character is called May, which is very fitting for this for this tag, and she's a gardener working at a university. She knows a lot about trees, and I think she would be the perfect person to walk through a garden with. The story of this book is like a very soft, slow-paced novel about May coming to the realization that her life is lacking a bit of something, and that missing part for her is friendship. So she decides to go about visiting some longtime friend that she hasn't seen in a while and stay with them for a few days or longer. There is this question of like, how long can you stay at someone's home? It's a very interesting kind of character study and looking at their relationship, what you know or don't know about your friends' lives, like what stands behind the surface. And that's it for this tag. Thanks again to Ellen for tagging me. I'm not gonna tag anyone on this one because it's already fairly late in the month, but if you're watching this and would like to give it a go, please do. I would love to hear your answers. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.